Authors Over 50, Writing in Life's Sweetest Third. Authors Over 50's weekly podcast celebrates writers and their journeys to publication. Writing after 50 is a whole story on its own, so let's skip to life's sweetest third and talk with authors about their journey from pen to publish. Welcome. I'm Julia Daly, your host, and I invite you to listen to interviews with writers who've achieved their goal of publishing a book just later in life. We've seen award lists for under 30 or under 40, but I've yet to see lists for those who've achieved a significant milestone of their own, launching a new career and publishing their first book after the age of 50. We will hear about these authors' inspirations, struggles, strategies, and the smell of that first book. These writers' journeys inspire me because I'm one of them. My guest today holds a master's degree in social work and has studied child development. She uses these insights to inform her picture book writing. She holds a master's degree in journalism and is currently working in public relations. Her goal in creating Be Kind Publishing is to produce lighthearted, rhyming stories with gentle themes of teamwork and friendship. She resides near Chicago, Illinois, with her husband and 2 terriers. Welcome to Authors Over 50, Sheryl Bass.
Thank you for having me.
Sheryl, our opening question on Authors Over 50 is always, what took you so long to write your first book?
Well, the story for the idea for Baby Dragon's Big Sneeze actually came to me 13 years ago. So I kind of put it aside. But then as I approached 50, my New Year's resolution for this last year, my 50th birthday was December 19th. So in 2022, my New Year's resolution was to get this published. And I had tried for a couple of years before with literary agents and publishing houses, and they weren't interested. So this last year in 2022, I decided to self-publish.
What do you think was the most difficult part of your artistic process there?
Well, right now, the marketing piece. I know I do PR for a living, so I know how to get myself interviews for things like this. But the paid ads and so on, that's all new to me. I don't know anything about that. So it's a learning curve. I'm learning new things. So it's exciting.
I think a lot of people say the same thing. And I wondered about that learning curve as far as self-publishing and how to teach yourself all of those different aspects of self-publishing. Was that a difficult learning curve for you?
Well, I thought it would be. I thought, that's why I'd been so reluctant to self-publish all these years. One, because there is an upfront cost involved, and I did get a personal loan to do that. And 2, because I thought I'd have to buy a thick book called Self-Publishing for Idiots or similar, and I'd have to really, figure all these things out. But it's a little bit of a misnomer. There are people that help you. In fact, I'm a member of 2 groups. One of them is Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, SCBWI, and the other one is Children's Book Insider, CBI. And both of those websites, if you're a member, the websites have videos on them that people can listen to. And they were for free. And one of these videos had a woman named April Cox, and she has a business called Self-Publishing Made Simple. And so the author who works with her, whoever works with her, can retain the rights to their book. And she helps with all of those kind of housekeeping things, like applying for ISBN codes, the little like UPC type symbol on the back of each book, how to file with the Library of Congress, how to find your illustrator. She has vendors that she works with. In fact, she had 12 illustrators that she knew were very responsive and would turn over the rights to the illustrations to the authors after the book was ready. That's like, as a work for hire. And so I looked through all 12, looked at their websites, and narrowed it down to my top 4, my favorite 4. And she said, okay, now have your favorite 4 illustrators sketch just a rough sketch, pay them each $50, have them rough sketch all the same scene from your children's picture book. And then that'll help you decide which you like best. So then I narrowed it down to two, and I used my friends and family as a focus group and said, especially those with kids and grandkids. And I said to them, which dragon do you like the best? And then I was able to find my illustrator, Ramesh Ram, who's excellent.
And that has got to be such a harrowing process because illustrations for children's books just is the most important thing next to your writing and has to capture the imagination of children. So how did you decide on that?
Well, that was actually the most fun part. Every time the illustrator would email me more illustrations to look at, it was like Christmas, opening the attachments and seeing my characters come to life. And when you self-publish, you have so much creative control. I was able to tell the illustrator exactly what I wanted my dragon to look like and what I wanted the people to be wearing, what's happening in every scene. So it was really great to partner like that. You can't do that if you traditionally publish, unless you're an author illustrator, in which case you're doing your own illustrations. But otherwise, they're choosing the illustrator, and it might not be your vision for your story at all. So
that's so true. And then to make sure that the colors are vivid and all of that, did you strictly publish through Amazon to do that?
So Amazon is in charge of my paperbacks and my ebook through Kindle, but Ingram Spark is in charge of my hardcovers. But people can still order them on Amazon. To the purchaser, they don't notice the difference. It's all on the same. You click either paperback or hardcover. They don't know that it's being handled by somebody else. But the nice thing about Ingram Spark is that my book is also available on Walmart.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and Target.com.
Yeah, that's a great incentive, I think, for writers to go with Ingram and have that wide distribution. And I do the same thing with my books. I have always thought about children's books and how beautiful they are and how much they mean to our children. My youngest granddaughter is 6 and she's a voracious reader and loves all of that, and in fact has written her own little children's books, so she may be a writer one day too. But I've heard that there are printing companies here in the US and of course in China that just do gorgeous jobs with the colors and the quality of work. So I'm always interested to know if anybody has chosen those routes.
Right. Well, yeah, I don't know. But for my illustrator, Ramesh Ram is through Pryan Animation. And so they do animated cartoon type images as well, moving images. And I'm going to use him in the future. I'm going to be doing sequels to this story, and I have other stories that are in rough draft form that are not related to this, that are picture book stories. They're also going to rhyme, and I'm also going to use him for those as well.
That's nice, I think, to keep that consistency, and then your books could be bought as a series or a set, and they all have the same look. How do you think writing that first book changed your process of writing for those to come?
My process for writing rhyme, I've been writing rhyme for a long time in other contexts. So, for example, my sister and I both sing. And growing up, we would always do parody songs for my family. That was what we would give as gifts for birthday, anniversaries, things like that. So we would take a song usually, and then usually the song lyrics already rhyme, and then we would change the lyrics to be about something funny in our family. And but my process is usually to come up with, well, with those songs, it was to come up with which song I was going to use and what ideas I was going to use. And it's the same for this. What are the ideas I have in my head before I put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard? What's going to happen roughly? So if I write something longer form, I probably would need to do an outline. But for a children's book, a children's picture book, which is usually around 400 words or so, I just have the idea in my head of what's going to happen. And then I have Rhyme Zone open and thesaurus.com open. And I go back and forth between them trying to find ways to phrase things. And I read it out loud to myself as I go along to make sure that the meter is correct. And then I do get it edited. I don't skip that process. I had two editors look at Baby Dragon's Big Sneeze. The first one was a woman named Laura Bontje, Bontje, and she did like the developmental edit, basically to make sure there were no holes in the story. For example, Baby Dragon's Big Sneeze is about a dragon that sneezes and accidentally burns down a whole village, and the people are mad at him and so on. Well, in the original story, the Laura Bontje said to me, why aren't the dragon's parents helping him? Why is he asking the community to help him? So then I realized that was a hole in the story, as one does, that's what the developmental edit is for. And so then I wrote some extra lines about how he hatched alone in this cave and how he doesn't have parents. And so one of the messages in the story is about found family. So, but she helped with that. And then the final editor is Bobby Hinman, who is an award-winning children's book author herself. And she also is an editor. And she helped me make sure that the meter was consistent and did that final piece as well.
Well, I love that it's a rhyming story. So many of our poems today are not rhyming. And that's what I love about poetry, is that I was so impressed with how everyone could rhyme. So I'm so happy that your book rhymes.
Thank you. Well, actually, interestingly, when I was submitting it to literary agents and publishing houses, some of the responses that I got back were, we don't like rhyme. We don't do. Yeah. And so sometimes things go in and out of fashion in the publishing world. And I guess rhyme is one of those that's sort of out of fashion now. But as someone who used to be a social worker, I know that there is research showing that rhyme helps children developmentally. It helps them with the language acquisition. It expands children's vocabulary, promotes reading skills, especially with reluctant readers, promotes creativity, gives kids a sense of rhythm, helps kids learn how to pronounce certain words because they're anticipating what the next word is going to be. And that's why things like nursery rhymes are such a big thing for children. So I definitely am a proponent of rhyme and definitely want to continue doing that in my future stories.
I think so too, because we used to have rhyming songs and poems, and even for multiplication tables, to learn those. And I think kids are missing out if they don't have rhymes. And I think that's such a talent. So I appreciate your continuing that in your children's books, because I do think that's crucial for children to keep those in their heads, and then they can learn to read by listening to your rhymes as they read. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people think that because you only use 400 words, that it's not as difficult as writing a novel. But I don't think that's the case. I think because you have such a small amount of valuable real estate, you have to make sure every word counts.
Right. Yes. And I think that my journalism background helped me with that. I don't know. I would like to write a novel one day, but my journalistic experience, I remember in journalism school, they would say, if you can't say it in 600 words, it's probably not worth saying. So all of the exposition, of describing the trees and the sky and this and that happens in novels, which I love to read, but I don't think I could replicate at this point. It would take a lot of unlearning of what I've learned as a journalist in order to do that. But the economy of words is very comfortable to me from my journalistic background.
Well, that's what I've heard from a lot of journalists I've interviewed, is they had to learn how to get much more descriptive because they were, to the point on everything. Yeah. And so I think that's great for you in your children's books.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a writing routine? I know you're still working in public relations. Do you write certain times of the day? Do you write every day, or do you wait to write on the weekends?
Usually it's on the weekend or in the evening. I know that I'm more awake and more creative in the evening. And with public relations, I work from home. So I'm able to kind of go with my own circadian rhythms. And that's important to kind of know yourself. If you're not barely able to formulate a sentence before your coffee and before, maybe, 10 or 11, don't try writing your book or your stories early in the morning. If that's not who you are, don't try to change your overall constitution. That's a piece of advice that I would offer. So, if I find myself at 3 a.m, either wanting to write a press release or a good first line comes to me, sometimes that happens. If I get a good first line, or something happens in my day that, like with Baby Dragon's big sneeze, it started because I sneezed. I had a really big sneeze one day, and I thought to myself, if I were a dragon, this would be really doing a lot of damage. And then that was just this absurd thought. And I thought, oh, well, that's a cute idea about a dragon, sneezing and burning down a village. And so then I started writing it. So the idea would come, but now I have an idea for the second one. And so I start writing a little bit, and then I let myself go away from it if I start to get frustrated. I maybe give myself a couple days and come back. There's no real deadline with this. This is all just self-inflicted, for lack of a better word. If this is my own, and it took me 13 years to do the first one. So it's not a race. I would like to have another one out by the end of this year, but if I don't, I don't. I met my own personal goal of having one book by the time I turn 50. And, so what I do sometimes is I jot things down as they come to me. So that's another thing that happens. Or I'll text it to myself, if something happens in my day that seems like a good idea for a story. And I start writing until I get stuck and annoyed, and then I walk away from it, and then I ponder it on my own and sleep on it and come back to it usually a couple days later.
Well, what about the second book? Can you share any ideas that you have for it, or are we going to be able to see this little dragon again?
Yes, you will see the dragon again, but I don't want to tell you what happens in the second book, because I'm not sure yet. I have an idea of what's going to happen to him, but I have to see if I can execute it. If I can't, then something else is going to happen to him. So I'm not absolutely positive yet.
But it is a series about this dragon.
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, what about publicity? We talked a little bit about that. You're in public relations. I was in public relations and marketing for most of my career, and I have found that it's much more difficult to promote myself than it is to promote others, hence the podcast, and I'm paying it forward to my fellow authors. So I find it much easier to promote others than to myself. But have you found any publicity that's worked for you, or maybe that didn't work you can share with us?
Well, I have had to really treat myself as if I'm somebody else. So yes, I have the same kind of insecurities and things like that. And so it is harder to promote myself than other people. But I've had to just, okay, I have this client named Sheryl Bass, and she deserves my attention, as if I'm two different people, and I need to promote her. And so that's what I've been doing. And, the same things that I would do for anyone else. I use the same databases and call the reporters and follow up. And I've also applied for several awards. There are several prestigious awards specifically for people who are self-published, which is nice. But there are also some that are not, that are just, you pay money to do it, but they don't have any reputation. But one of the things that was nice is that April Cox was able to tell me which are the good awards that actually are reputable to go ahead and apply for, and which ones to kind of stay away from. So that was good. So that was part of my, so I'm also trying to get myself to do readings and signings at bookstores and libraries, and podcasts, and also the traditional media that I also garner for people. I'm trying to garner for myself.
I think those are all great ideas. And I've heard a lot of children's authors going into the schools and having readings there and handing out bookmarks, and maybe their parents will use those to remember the book, to be able to, order the book if you have that information on the back of bookmarks, things like that the children can take home. But trying to get it in the school libraries, A lot of ideas like that for children's books.
Right. That's a great idea about the bookmarks. I hadn't thought of that. Hmm.
What about any specific books or seminars or writing retreats or groups that you can share that improved your writing journey?
Well, SCBWI and Children's Book Insider, Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, I would definitely, if people want to do children's writing, I would definitely recommend both of those groups because they have retreats, they have online webinars and trainings, and they also have videos that you can watch for free on their websites. And that's how I found my sort of my Yoda on this journey, which is April Cox. But also, I found my editor, my first editor, Laura Bonci, through a Facebook group. So Facebook can also be very useful to bounce ideas off of people, other authors. So, type in for groups. They have groups for everything, for diseases that you may think you might have and for whatever, your hobbies and interests. And so, for self-publishing and for just authors in general, there are several Facebook groups, and you can just you can lurk. You don't even necessarily have to post a question yourself, and see what other people are asking and make connections that way. That's been very helpful for me.
Well, Sheryl, tell us a little bit more about the premise of the book. We talked about the sneeze, so maybe that's all you need to set it up, but read for us a few of your pages so we can hear your tone and voice in the book.
Okay, great. Well, so basically the premise, as you know, is this dragon's flying around and he has this sneeze and he burns down a village and he's horrified when he realizes what he's done. So he goes to write an apology note. But and the town is ready to attack him. Everyone in the town is, but this little girl, it doesn't make sense to her. Why would he be flying around and be, perfectly fine with them for several weeks and then all of a sudden decide to attack them? It didn't make sense. She was angry, but she at least wanted to hear him out. So another message in this story is giving others the benefit of the doubt, not jumping to conclusions about situations. So she goes to talk to him, goes into his cave and confronts him and asks him why he did this. And she actually becomes sort of the hero of the story because she saves him. It turns out he has a cold and the town works together to help him. But she sort of advocates on his behalf and saves him, saves the town. And so there's messages in the story about sharing, compassion, helping those in need, all of those pro-social values. In fact, a lot of people refer to it as social emotional learning. And so it's got those pro-social aspirational messages. And that's why I started Be Kind Publishing, because all of my stories are going to have in common those sorts of messages. But I'll just read a few pages. This is Baby Dragon's Big Sneeze. Here, and there's the girl, and there's the dragon with the snot coming out of his nose and the red eyes, roomy from illness. Okay. I will tell you a story from legends of old of a huge baby dragon who caught a bad cold. He had soared through the villages just as he pleased until one autumn day he regrettably sneezed. And here is, for those of you looking on YouTube, here's the illustrations. I'm holding up the book and showing our dragon, and I'll just read a few.
Those are great. He's a great dragon.
I know, really good illustration. Fire burst from his mouth and it burned every shack. So the townspeople planned a great dragon attack. And here he is, achoo, sneezing, blowing fire. And you see all the people with their
big sneeze.
Yep. When he saw what he did, the young dragon got scared and wrote an apology note that declared, "For weeks I've been flying around having fun. I never intended to hurt anyone, but I caught a bad cold and then suddenly sneezed. Yes, I burned all your houses and now you're displeased." Here he is writing the note. And here he is feeling bad. And I'll just read these next two pages before the girl comes. If someone could help me to finally mend, I'd love to assist you and be your new friend. He was planning to leave them the note overnight before any people could find him and fight.
Oh. That's
So,
lovely,
and then
Cheryl. That's really lovely and
thank you.
beautiful, beautiful illustrations. I think children are going to love this book.
Thank you.
Do you ever Google yourself or read reviews? If so, how do you deal with the bad or the good ones?
I love the good ones, of course, and I repost them. That's another good, that's a best practice in terms of marketing. Um, Anytime you get a good review, put it on, post it, say, oh, check out this great review I just got on Amazon, and post it on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of those things. And that's what I've been doing. The bad reviews or, not so great reviews, I just kind of um, shrug them off as best I can and move on. And if there's something um, that is, I do take into consideration what people say. I don't blow off anything that could seem possibly negative, because sometimes there can be feedback that is worth taking. So I read them and I take them in, but I don't let them just destroy me as a person. April says you're not really a true writer until you get your first 1-star review. And that does happen. Sometimes people just don't get it, and that's okay. Takes all kinds in this world. So, but you're not writing for the 1-star person. You're writing for the people that can read it and appreciate it and love it. So,
Absolutely. And I think there are trolls on every site that just want to bring
yes.
us
And she
down.
also said, and this is interesting, she said sometimes the people who give you bad reviews could be spies for or your actual competitors. So if somebody, it can be pretty cutthroat in writing. So if somebody who gives you a bad review could be, have a similar book and to be using a different name or something in their review. And but that's how they're doing that. They're trying to undermine your sales or your overall score, as it were. So
It's so frustrating because the writing community is such a generous community. You hate to think that any writer would do such a thing, but I think there are people who just have nothing better to do because my first 1-star review said I just didn't like the way it felt in my hand. Well,
oh my
that
gosh.
doesn't have anything to do with the story.
Right. Wow.
So you have to forget about those and dwell on the 5 stars.
Exactly.
How does your family, what do they think about your writing and your career as a writer?
They're very proud. My nephews and my sister and my mom all helped me come up with, they had, one of my nephews is very detail oriented, and he was able to notice any inconsistencies in the illustrations and so on. Oh, in this page, the dragon has 5 scales. In this page, he has 4 scales. That kind of level of detail, which is very important. So they've all been very helpful. My father, another reason I frankly wanted to get this done, was that my father was very ill last year. And I wanted him to be able to hold the book in his hands before he passed. And unfortunately, he passed away when the illustrations were still in the black and white stage. He never got to see them in color. So I made the dedication to him in the book. And which is another thing that's nice about self-publishing. Children's books that are traditionally published don't generally even have a dedication page, but I was able to do that and honor my dad in that way. And that felt really nice.
I do think that is a lovely thing to do. And I think it's so nice to be able to leave this book as a legacy in your family. And everybody is so proud that they have an author in their family.
Mm-hmm. And they can all participate. It was something positive while he was very ill that I would share the illustrations as I would get them in email. And my father would look at them, and even though he could barely do anything by that point, but he was like, oh, these are adorable. And it was so nice to have something positive that we could all look forward to. So.
And just thinking, with my public relations cap on, if I were writing a children's book, it might be fun to go into your local neighborhood school, elementary school, and have a contest and let the kids help you name the a character in your story or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. That
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't cost you anything, but would certainly bring a lot of good press, and you might could get
Mm.
that into the newspapers, and
Mm.
and that would be a fun thing for the kids to be involved with, and maybe they would all have to have their own copy of the book.
Mm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. That is cute. That is a cute idea.
Well, Cheryl, as always, our last interview question is our writers over 50 are a unique set. Do you have any advice for writers 50 and above?
It's the same advice that I would give to writers who are parents or writers who are busy professionals or whatever the circumstances, which are some of the things that I do that I find helpful. If look around you as you go about your day, think with your writer's cap on and think, would this be a cute story for a child? How can I make this into a cute story for a child? And if a good first line comes to you or a good premise comes to you, jot it down, text it to yourself, say it into your phone, record yourself saying it. And then as you are able and as your own circadian rhythms dictate, write when you are able and when you can. And remember that it's not a race. And and it's your own personal goal. So there's no timeline on this. And it took me 13 years, as I said, to do this one, to get this one out there. So, and then the others will hopefully come faster. But it can happen, and self-publishing has really leveled the playing field for people who are not famous and who are just regular folks who have a good idea and want to get it out there. So it's a great time in the world of publishing for regular people with an idea to get it out there. So I would encourage people to follow their ideas and see where they lead.
You are certainly an inspiration to those who want to write children's books, and the rhyming is so beautiful, and the message even nicer, because I think we all need to be kind to one another in this world, and it starts with our children. So writing a book about that is certainly going to impact many, many lives in the future. And we're happy to say that you're now one of our authors over 50.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Please look for Authors Over 50 every Thursday, when we will have conversations with accomplished debut novelists over the age of 50. Please subscribe and share with a friend, and check out my own publication journey after 50 at www.juliadaily, that's DAILY, like dailynewspaper.com. Until next time, keep reading and writing, and remember, it's never too late to fulfill a dream in life's sweetest third.